The shimmer caught my eye first, like moonlight trapped under ice, moving across the crowded ballroom. Then I saw who was wearing it. Her. And the air left my lungs in a silent gasp. It wasn't just a dress. It was my soul, stitched into fabric, stolen and draped over the wrong person. Chloe. Preening under the chandeliers, soaking in the admiration, utterly clueless. My hands clenched at my sides, knuckles white. Rage, cold and sharp, coiled low in my gut. But beneath its patience, a chilling, secret satisfaction. Because I knew about the threads holding that impossible shimmer together. I knew how fragile they really were. Let her bask in the glow. Let her believe she'd won. Tick-tock, Chloe. Your stolen moment is unraveling. Just 6 months earlier, my biggest worry wasn't sabotage, it was making rent. My name is Anya, and I am a fashion designer pouring every ounce of myself into making a name in the city. As a young woman trying to break into an industry paved with privilege and connections I didn't have, my life ran on lukewarm coffee, sheer determination, and the constant, comforting hum of my sewing machine. My apartment wasn't much more than a glorified closet with a window, but it was my space. Mannequins draped in muslin prototypes stood like silent roommates amidst drifts of fabric scraps and mountains of sketches. The air always smelled faintly of steamed cotton, pencil shavings, and the metallic tang of pins held between my teeth. Glamorous? Hardly. I was fueled by instant ramen, the occasional freelance tailoring job that barely paid the bills, and this burning, unshakable belief that my designs deserved to be seen. Fashion wasn't just clothes to me. It was storytelling. It was structure and flow, armor and vulnerability. It was the only language I felt truly fluent in. My entire focus, my entire hope, was pinned on the Phoenix Gala. This wasn't just another industry party with lukewarm champagne and forced smiles. This was the event. The place where emerging designers could get rocket-strapped into the spotlight. Catch the eye of buyers, critics, mentors, maybe even land a deal that meant graduating from instant ramen to actual groceries. Getting accepted felt like winning the lottery. I'd poured weeks into my portfolio, sleepless nights refining sketches, agonizing over fabric choices. When the acceptance email landed, I actually cried. This was it. My shot. And I had an idea, a design that felt different, riskier, more me than anything I'd ever conceived. It involved complex, sculptural draping and a unique, iridescent fabric that seemed to drink the light. Sourcing it had been a quest in itself, involving obscure suppliers and weeks of testing. This dress wasn't just my entry to the gala, it felt like the key to unlocking my future. Life was a whirlwind of stress, exhaustion, and adrenaline, but it was my whirlwind. I felt like I was finally getting somewhere. Little did I know, someone else was watching my climb, sharpening her knives. And that someone was Chloe Devereux. Chloe moved through the same circles I did, the workshops, the industry mixers, the desperate scramble for recognition. She possessed a kind of brittle glamour, all sharp angles and expensive perfume, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her designs, they were fine. Technically proficient, commercially safe, but always lacking that spark, that distinct point of view. They often felt like competent echoes of whatever was already trending. What she lacked in originality, though, she made up for in ruthless ambition. There was a hardness beneath the polish, a competitive hunger that always made my internal alarms ping softly whenever she was near. We exchanged polite hellos, the kind of surface-level cordiality common between rivals pretending they aren't sizing each other up. We were definitely not friends. The first real crack in that polite facade appeared maybe a month after my gala acceptance. I was working late, lost in draping fabric on my mannequin, when the distinct, cloying scent of Chloe's signature sandalwood and vanilla perfume hit me. Strong. Like she was right there. But the door was locked. The windows closed. I shook my head, blaming fatigue. Then it happened again a few days later. A faint whiff near my main cutting table. Paranoia started to creep in. Was I losing my mind? Then came the unannounced visit. The buzzer in my ancient building was famously unreliable, prone to letting people tailgate in. One afternoon, I turned from my sewing machine and there she was, standing right in the middle of my cramped studio, taking it all in with unnervingly sharp eyes. Sketches for the gala gown were tacked to my inspiration board. Fabric swatches lay scattered nearby. My heart jumped into my throat. Anya, darling. Her voice was like sugar-coated steel. Just passing through this charming little neighborhood, thought I'd see where all the magic happens. It felt utterly staged. My studio was my sanctuary, my messy, vulnerable creative space. Her presence felt like an intrusion. She didn't just glance around, she scanned. Her eyes lingered on the sketches, on the swatches of the iridescent fabric I'd finally sourced after weeks of searching. Interesting, she murmured, picking up a small scrap, rubbing it between her fingers with a possessiveness that made my skin crawl. Quite unique. Wherever did you find such a thing? I mumbled something vague about a specialty supplier, trying to steer her away from my work table, feeling exposed and strangely defensive. She pressed, asking about my concept, her questions too specific, too probing. Heard you're planning something rather bold for the gala? She'd asked, that fake bright smile fixed on her face. I deflected, downplayed, but felt increasingly uneasy. She finally left, trailing compliments that felt like veiled insults. The encounter left me rattled. It wasn't just curiosity. It felt predatory. Why the sudden, intense interest in my specific project? A cold knot of foreboding settled in my stomach. This wasn't just competition anymore. Something felt wrong. The wrongness didn't fade. It festered. Over the next few weeks, the unsettling incidents escalated from vague suspicions to tangible disruptions. It was like psychological warfare waged with perfume and missing stationery. Small, essential tools would vanish from my workbench, my favorite seam ripper, a specific set of marking pencils. Annoying, but easily replaceable. Then bigger things. A crucial pattern piece I'd spent hours perfecting disappeared overnight. I searched frantically, convinced I'd misplaced it in my creative chaos, but it was gone. Replacing it cost me precious time I couldn't afford. The lingering scent of Chloe's perfume seemed stronger some mornings, a ghostly reminder of her unwelcome visit, making me wonder if she somehow had access I didn't know about. Was she sneaking in? Bribing the building super? The paranoia gnawed at me, making it hard to focus. Then Chloe's social media presence shifted. Vague, boastful posts started appearing about her own gala design. Captions like preparing to redefine elegance and working with materials that will simply take your breath away. Initially, I tried to ignore it, typical pre-event hype. But then came a filtered photo of a fabric swatch, bathed in moody lighting, captioned, experimenting with light and luminescent sparkles, #Galaready, #innovation. The color, the subtle sheen, it looked disturbingly familiar. My stomach tightened. Coincidence? Maybe. But coupled with the missing pattern piece, the creepy perfume traces, it felt like too much. At a mandatory pre-gala designers meeting, I tried to subtly gauge her reaction. During a coffee break, I approached her, keeping my voice neutral. Chloe, your social media teasers look intriguing. That luminous fabric sounds amazing. Her eyes flickered with something, recognition? Amusement? Before smoothing back into carefully constructed nonchalance. Oh, thank you, Anya, she replied, examining her perfectly manicured nails. One does try to innovate. It's terribly difficult finding truly original materials these days, isn't it? She paused, then looked directly at me, a slight smirk playing on her lips. I do hope your little project is coming along. Can't wait to see what you've managed to put together. The condescending tone, the deliberate emphasis on little project, it was a clear dismissal, a power play. She wasn't just ignoring my implied question, she was mocking me. I walked away, my hands trembling slightly. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. She knew she was treading on my territory. She was practically daring me to call her out, knowing I had no solid proof. The anxiety I felt was now laced with a growing, helpless anger. She was playing a dangerous game, and the Gala clock was ticking relentlessly louder. The mask finally ripped off about 3 weeks before the Gala. I was drowning in work, trying desperately to catch up, compensating for the setbacks Chloe's subtle sabotage had caused. I just finalized the most intricate part of the gown, the bodice. It involved a complex, hand-pleated structure using the iridescent fabric, designed to create a specific play of light and shadow. It was the heart of the design. Exhausted but proud, I'd taken detailed photos and notes, locking the physical sketches away securely each night, convinced I was finally ahead of her game. The next morning, scrolling through a major online fashion journal, my world tilted on its axis. There it was, an exclusive sneak peek at Chloe Devereaux's highly anticipated gala creation. The article featured a beautifully rendered digital sketch. It wasn't just inspired by my design. It was my design. My exact bodice structure, the precise way the pleats caught the light, the unique silhouette, even the flow of the skirt I'd spent days perfecting. Someone had fed the journal my work, claiming it as Chloe's. I felt the blood drain from my face. My breath came in ragged gasps. It was so blatant, so audacious. The missing pattern piece, the probing questions, the social media hints, it all crashed together in a sickening wave of realization. She hadn't just been inspired, she'd orchestrated a deliberate, calculated theft. The violation felt physical, like a punch to the gut.
How?
How had she gotten such detailed information? Had she bribed someone? Hacked my computer? Broken into my studio when I was out grabbing coffee? The possibilities made me feel dizzy, violated, and furious. My vision blurred with tears, not of sadness, but of sheer, incandescent rage. For maybe 12 solid hours, I was a wreck. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I just sat there, staring at the gown on my mannequin, now feeling like a monument to my own foolishness. What was the point of finishing? She'd already debuted my concept. If I showed up with the same dress, I'd look like the copycat, the fraud. She'd stolen my design, my gala moment, my potential future, all in one calculated move. The injustice burned. All those sacrifices, the ramen, the endless hours hunched over my machine for what? To have it ripped away by someone with fewer scruples and possibly better connections? But then, something inside me snapped. The despair, the helplessness, it began to burn away, leaving behind something hard and sharp. Anger. Pure, undiluted rage.
No.
Absolutely not. I would not let her win. I wouldn't let her parade my soul around like a trophy. She wanted my design? She could have it. But she had no idea the real price she was about to pay. The rage cleared my head, focusing my thoughts like a laser. I started thinking, not about defeat, but about payback. How did she get the sketches? And more importantly, did she understand everything she'd stolen? My mind began to churn, searching for a weakness, a flaw in her plan. And then, I remembered the fabric. My thoughts immediately jumped to Leo. The intern. Young, impressionable, maybe a little starstruck, definitely overly inquisitive about my techniques. He'd only lasted 3 weeks before vanishing, citing a vague family emergency. At the time, I'd been too busy to question it. Now, it seemed chillingly plausible. Had Chloe poached him? Promised him money, exposure, a shortcut? He would have seen the sketches pinned up, maybe even handled the pattern pieces. He could have easily photographed everything, copied notes when I wasn't looking. It felt like a betrayal, but it made horrifying sense. That must have been how she got the intricate details. But then, my mind latched onto the fabric itself. That gorgeous, temperamental, iridescent material. Chloe had clearly identified its visual appeal, but did she truly understand its properties? Because my journey with that fabric hadn't been straightforward. Before I perfected the stable formula that gave it its luminous glow and durability, I'd gone through countless experiments. Weeks of frustration, trial, and error. And there was one early batch. Oh, I remembered it vividly. It looked spectacular under the lights, even more dazzling than the final version. But it was disastrously unstable. I discovered purely by accident a spilled drop of condensation from a cold drink during a humid late-night session, that this specific early formula reacted catastrophically to a combination of heat and moisture. Even just body heat and perspiration, amplified by friction or certain liquids, caused the delicate molecular bonds in the coating to degrade. Not just weaken, but actively break down. The fabric wouldn't just rip, it would practically disintegrate. Lose all structural integrity, become fragile as a spiderweb, prone to splitting and shredding under the slightest stress. I'd meticulously documented this failure in a secondary research notebook, the precise chemical composition, the temperature thresholds, the embarrassing photos of the dissolved swatches, clearly labeling the pages, Formula 7B, failed batch, highly unstable, do not use. I'd shoved that notebook onto a back shelf, buried amongst old project files, focusing only on the successful, stabilized formula afterwards. Had Leo, in his haste to gather intel for Chloe, grabbed that notebook too? Or maybe just photographed those pages, mistaking the failed formula's visual brilliance in the photos for the intended final result? Chloe, blinded by ambition and the desire to outshine everyone, likely saw the notes about enhanced luminosity and either missed or deliberately ignored the stark warnings about instability. She probably thought she'd lucked into an even better version of my idea. A slow, icy smile spread across my face. It wasn't just an idea forming, it was a certainty. Chloe hadn't just stolen my design. She'd stolen a self-destruct sequence. She thought she was walking into the gala with a showstopper. In reality, she was wearing a ticking clock made of dissolving threads. I didn't need to scream foul play. I didn't need proof. All I needed to do was show up, maybe ensure the conditions were optimal, and watch. The dress itself would deliver the verdict. The Grand Astoria Ballroom on the night of the Phoenix Gala was a sensory overload. A dizzying kaleidoscope of glittering gowns, sharp tuxedos, blinding camera flashes, and the constant roar of hundreds of conversations layered over the smooth sounds of a live jazz quartet. The air hummed with expensive perfume, ambition, and the clinking of countless champagne flutes. I arrived intentionally late, slipping in almost unnoticed, wearing a simple, elegant black dress I'd designed years ago, a stark contrast to the expected explosion of color and avant-garde shapes. Tonight wasn't about me showcasing anything. Tonight was about witnessing poetic justice, serve shimmering and unstable. My stomach churned with a mixture of nervous energy and cold anticipation. I scanned the glittering throng, my eyes searching for that specific, stolen luminescence. And then I found her, Chloe, positioned strategically near the main staircase, already surrounded by a fawning circle of press and industry insiders. And she was wearing it, my dress. Under the intense heat of the ballroom spotlights, the iridescent fabric seemed to vibrate with light. Yes, definitely the unstable prototype. It clung to her like a second skin, the intricate bodice I'd agonized over sculpting her figure perfectly, the skirt pooling around her feet like liquid metal. Objectively, divorced from the theft and the impending doom, it was stunning. A sharp pang of injustice twisted inside me. That dress represented months of my life, my passion, my breakthrough moment, stolen and flaunted. Chloe's eyes met mine across the room. A flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by that infuriatingly smug, triumphant smirk. She thought my presence was a sign of defeat, that I'd come to witness her coronation. She lifted her champagne glass slightly, a silent, mocking toast. I held her gaze for a beat, letting none of my anger show, only a cool, steady watchfulness. Then I offered a tiny, enigmatic smile before melting back into the relative anonymity of the crowd near the bustling bar area. Let her have her spotlight. Its wattage was about to cause problems. I kept her in my peripheral vision. She was gliding through the room, accepting compliments with practiced grace, posing for photos, basking in the glow of stolen glory. Chloe, the fabric is simply breathtaking. A true innovation, declared a prominent fashion blogger I recognized. Chloe tilted her head, feigning modesty. Thank you. It was a labor of love, developing something so unique. The lie was so bald-faced it almost made me laugh out loud. As the night progressed, the ballroom grew noticeably warmer. The sheer number of bodies, the hot lights, the energy of the crowd created a distinct microclimate. Chloe, flushed with success, and probably her third glass of champagne, was circulating near the edge of the impromptu dance floor. That's when I saw the first telltale sign. A minuscule puckering along the seam under her arm, where fabric meets skin, heat, and friction. Almost imperceptible, but I knew my construction, and I knew the flaw. My heart gave a little jump. It was beginning. Slowly, subtly at first, the fabric began to betray her. The intense shimmer seemed to develop faint, dull patches, particularly across her back and shoulders. Then, during an animated conversation, she gestured widely, and I saw a tiny tear appear near the cuff of her sleeve. She glanced down, her smile faltering for a split second before snapping back into place. A few minutes later, someone dancing nearby accidentally bumped into her. A small sound, like tearing silk, was briefly audible. Chloe's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she subtly checked the side seam. A look of faint confusion, then annoyance, crossed her features. The degradation was accelerating. Now was my chance. Carrying a glass of chilled, sparkling water, I began weaving through the crowd towards her. Feigning a loss of balance on the polished floor, I stumbled, accidentally, jostling her arm as I passed. "Oh, goodness, I am so sorry," I exclaimed, ensuring a decent splash of the cold, mineral-rich water landed squarely on the back of her dress, near the already stressed shoulder area. "It's terribly crowded in here." Chloe shot me a look that could curdle milk. "It's fine," she snapped, dabbing at the wet spot with a napkin, her voice tight with irritation. But it wasn't fine. The combination of the existing strain points, the sudden temperature shock from the cold water, the moisture itself, and possibly a reaction with the minerals that acted like pouring gasoline on a spark. Within minutes, the damp area didn't just dry. The fabric around it seemed to visibly weaken, losing its structure. A seam running down her back suddenly gave way with a distinct rip, exposing a startlingly long strip of her skin and beige underpinning. A collective gasp rippled through the nearest onlookers. Chloe froze, her face draining of all color. Pure panic flashed in her eyes. She spun around, trying desperately to hold the gaping seam closed, but the fabric was literally disintegrating under her touch. Another seam split near her waist. Then a large section of the skirt near the hem seemed to simply unravel, drooping sadly. The crowd instinctively pulled back, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and morbid curiosity on their faces. Whispers erupted. Phones emerged, held aloft not so subtly. Her revolutionary gown was visibly dissolving, shredding, becoming transparent in patches, revealing far more than she ever intended. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a full-scale structural collapse. Chloe stood trapped in the spotlight, horrified, clutching at the ruined shreds of my design, her moment of triumph dissolving into utter, public humiliation. And I watched, the cold knot of anger inside me finally loosening into a profound, quiet calm. The implosion was spectacular. Mortified beyond recovery, Chloe stumbled away from the center of attention, desperately trying to gather the tattered, dissolving remnants of the dress around her. Security guards, sensing the escalating disaster, quickly materialized and escorted her through a side door, away from the pointing fingers, hushed but loud whispers, and the relentless flash of phone cameras capturing her ignominious exit. The gala buzzed with the scandal for the rest of the night. By morning, it was everywhere. Fashion blogs, gossip sites, even mainstream news outlets picked up the story. Designer disaster. Chloe Devereaux's dress dissolves at Phoenix Gala. Fabric fail. Star designer's gown falls apart mid-event. The narrative instantly flipped from fawning praise to mockery and suspicion. Questions arose about her competence, her choice of materials, her integrity. The word fraudulent started appearing in comment sections. Her carefully crafted image was shredded as effectively as the dress itself. No one immediately accused her of stealing my design in the press. The dissolving fabric was bizarre enough on its own. But the right people, the ones who mattered in the industry, the ones who had seen my original portfolio or heard the whispers, started connecting the dots. The prominent fashion blogger who'd been gushing over Chloe earlier contacted me a few days later, her tone now cautious and inquisitive. I didn't need to resort to accusations or drama. I simply invited her, along with a few key buyers and mentors I knew had been at the gala, to a private viewing at my, still small, but much tidier, studio. There, under clean, honest lighting, I presented the real gown. Constructed flawlessly from the stable, perfected version of the iridescent fabric. It glowed with a subtle, resilient beauty, embodying the elegance and innovation Chloe had tried to mimic and failed so spectacularly to execute. Seeing the genuine article, understanding the context of the gala disaster, it spoke volumes more than any accusation I could have leveled. Chloe's career trajectory nosedived. Rumors spread about canceled contracts, withdrawn investments, and her quietly retreating from the public eye. I heard later she'd moved back to her hometown, the Devereaux name now associated more with dissolving dresses than design. As for me, the quiet showing, coupled with the industry buzz about the gala incident, unexpectedly opened doors. People were intrigued by the story, yes, but they were ultimately impressed by the craftsmanship and resilience evident in my actual work. I secured representation, landed a mentorship with a designer I'd admired for years, and received my first significant orders. My studio is larger now, sunlight streams through the windows, and while I still work long hours, the scent in the air is pure possibility, untainted by cheap perfume or paranoia. Looking back, the satisfaction of that night was intense, visceral. Watching Chloe's arrogance literally unravel was a moment of pure, unadulterated karma. Did I give karma a little nudge with that glass of water? Absolutely. Without hesitation. She chose to build her success on theft and deceit. She underestimated me, and she fundamentally misunderstood the materials she was working with, a fatal error in fashion. My revenge wasn't just about payback. It was about reclaiming my narrative, my work, my future. It taught me that while the industry can be cutthroat, integrity and genuine talent have a resilience that cheap tricks and stolen glory can never truly replicate. Some designs, like some people, just fall apart under pressure. Others endure.